Struggling to secure all your applications with modern identity services? You're not alone. But with Identity Orchestration, you can say goodbye to refactoring and complexity. Strata Identity helps you modernize app identity at scale while mitigating security risks and simplifying policy management. Maintain a consistent security posture and simplify policy management with Identity Orchestration. If you're ready to simplify your identity environment and improve your app security, share your IAM challenge with the Strata team to get a brand new set of earbuds. Just visit securityweekly.com/strata to learn more. That's securityweekly.com/strata. Imperva is the comprehensive digital security leader on a mission to help organizations protect their data and all paths to it. Only Imperva protects all digital experiences, from business logic to APIs, microservices, the data layer, and from vulnerable legacy environments to cloud-first organizations. With an integrated approach combining network, application, and data security, Imperva protects companies ranging from cloud-native startups to global multinationals with hybrid infrastructure. Start a free trial today and quickly protect your web applications at securityweekly.com/Imperva. Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley here in Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with Asaf Ashkenazi, CEO of Verimatrix. Welcome, Asaf.
Thank you very much for having me. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm doing very well. Excited to be at the conference this year.
Yeah.
And mobile app security. I love this topic because I think of web application security quite a bit. The browsers are the new operating systems, the browsers where all the logic is, but we can't forget about mobile apps, can we? There's a lot of trust that people put into that.
Absolutely. If you look at, let's say that you lose your phone tomorrow, you're lost because we are doing everything with our phone, and it's everything with the app. Accessing your bank, if you need to get like a boarding pass when you go back home, your healthcare information. Some people have their therapist now is remote health. Connecting to your car, to open it, close it, to locate it. So we do everything there. And it's actually for companies, it is the connection between them and their customers.
Yes.
It's the most important thing. And if you look at the data that is there, it's all the data that you are concerned of.
So that's what's to target, exactly.
Yeah, and that's where I think it's like sometimes a blind spot because the application itself is now the new way of the hackers to get the way in, because you know how they are. They are always looking for the easy way, like everyone else in life.
Yeah.
And you know, the wonderful companies that we see here in RSA are building a lot of nice solutions. So it's becoming more and more difficult for them to go through the traditional ways. So they're looking for new ways to get in. And the app is one, unfortunately, one of the ways that we now see a lot of activities or malicious activity around it.
Absolutely. And you listed off a lot of the reasons why our identities, our personalities, the important things to us are on our apps, as well as the companies building those apps. They tend to have some secrets in there as well. They have intellectual property. There's a lot of things that they have to protect for themselves.
Absolutely. If you look at the companies that today utilize the phone to do a lot of the algorithmics as the computational in the edge. Mm-hmm. Let's say that you have even an example of an insulin pump. In the past, they put the brain in the pump that is connected to you, but it's expensive. You need to put the chip there. Why not use the CPU that's on your phone? It's free for that, right? So they move a lot of the algorithms, a lot of the control into the app that is running on the phone, which, again, open it to vulnerabilities.
Yeah, and there's got to be as well all the trend to work from home, as well as bring in the BYOD. All of that does the enterprise know what's on the app? Can they control the app versus this is my personal device? And
that's an interesting point, because when you look at BYOD, is when the employee is bringing the phone and asked to connect to the enterprise. Then the employer have more power in terms of telling them, okay, if you want to do it, you need to install my software that will monitor and get root access, which means a lot of access to your phone.
Which is scary.
But if you are going to download an app from, I don't know, your supermarket or whatever, and they tell you, oh, by the way, if you want to use our app, you need to also download an additional application that will get access to everything. What will you say? No way. So we are dealing with consumers, and this is what's unique in our solution, or what we developed, is that it stays on the app. It does not require any access to hardware or to work with anyone or to have the consumers to install things or even to ask for a different permission. It just uses whatever the application has.
That's brilliant, because that's the modern way of approaching any application design, especially security, is reducing that friction. And why does this light, flashlight app need your, geolocation,
No.
silly things like that? But why does a security tool need all this extra privileged access? That becomes a new attack surface. That becomes a way to attack as well.
No, I agree. And this is where they're using it. You make a good example of the flashlight. What we see a lot is the application that are downloaded as a flashlight, but then they attack other applications with an attack that's called overlay. When you launch the real application, they jump in front and they look the same, and you don't know that this is the real app. It looks exactly the same. You will put your password, but more than this, when you'll get this text message, the one-time password to verify it, they will even steal that and pass it to somebody else. The other thing that we see is really interesting, which is the misconception that Apple and Google are protecting everything in the app. Now, Apple and Google are actually doing a good job. So if you hope that I will say something bad about them, I will not. But we need to look at what are they doing. They are protecting or making sure that the application does not attack the phone or does not attack any other application. Or in simple words, they have policies. And if the application does not violate these policies, the application can do whatever the application wants. Well, guess what? You can do a lot of bad things within the application. For example, if you're running a bank application and there is some malicious code there, or code that got through your supply chain into the app, and this code decides to send the same information to another server, not just to the bank. How do you know about it? Can Apple know that this is something bad? No, it's a code in your application. They cannot know. Can Google know? No. So they are doing their job, but it's not enough. And this is where there is a need to protect the application, but not just the application itself, but also to monitor that this application, not monitoring what the users are doing in the application, but that the application is behaved normally. And there are companies that are trying to do it from the server, from the cloud, to just look. But without seeing what's going on there, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to see just from the traffic that something is wrong, because the hackers are using the application traffic and it all looks normal. So these solutions are saying, hey, it's an Apple app or a Google app. It's behaving in the same communication that we expect. It's good to go.
You have, how much visibility can you get? You can get only so much just from that network traffic, from what it's hitting the API, versus this is what is actually inside the app. And to your point, Google, Apple want those sandboxes to separate so that they, all these apps can play well together, but not really communicate unless they're allowed to. But they don't know that this app isn't supposed to be siphoning credentials, doing something with your data, or what was that supply chain of the, what got snuck into this particular web app?
Exactly that. Also, the information that it's in the app itself, as you mentioned. We talked to some gray hat, or the people that do pen testing to find. I asked them, what do you do to start attack the application server? Say, well, the first thing that I do is I see if they have an app. Then I download the app. Then I reverse engineer it. And in about 5 minutes, I find the credentials that allow me to connect.
There's the API key. Yeah, exactly.
So the key is there in the app, and it's not protected. Now, they still need to attack the server, and there is a lot of... But they already saved themselves or bypassed the security that the company paid millions to, just by using that. So there is a lot of new things that are now happening with the apps, that hackers saying, how can we utilize that resource in order to get what we want faster?
Indeed. And there's also the types of attacks to say, I'm going to create this bot version of the mobile app because I have the API key, I know the API access, so I can do things like buy concert tickets or squat on those. There's lots of other additional things with fraud. You can charge, just checking some credit card numbers. Is this valid, not valid? And then go, take advantage of that way too. So it's not even, it goes beyond just what's the information in that mobile app too.
Yeah. We saw an example, a good example, what some of them are doing. They download your app, they reverse engineer it, They include their code, malicious code, to do different things. The app, but the thing is that the app is still functioning as it intended because it's your original app. You just added the code there. Then they send a text message to the victim saying there is a new update or you've been selected to use the one, right? Mm-hmm. Not everybody, a lot of people ignore it, but some will install it. But when they will launch the app, the malicious one, it will actually connect, let's say it's a bank, it will actually connect to your bank account because it's running it has the real credentials. And the user has no way to know that it's not the real app.
Yeah, we shouldn't be blaming the user for that one either, yeah.
But we saw them even doing things that are bolder. They are taking to like some famous chat, let's say, that is happening, and they're saying, this is the gold version. We saw it in India. I think it was in India. This is the gold version, and you get more features. So they developed features that user want that are not available in the right chat. And they're saying, you're now selected to try it because you're a premium user, to try it. So people say, well, maybe it's not. I'll try it. I download it. But it works. It's connected to the real chat server because it's the real application with the real credentials. And they're using it, but guess what? All the information also goes to the hackers.
That's amazing. And that's what's also as I mentioned, we don't blame the users for that type of thing. It's more of why aren't Google and Apple only have so much that they can see into this. So we as information security industry need to have that visibility, need to figure out what is going on, distinguish good versus bad apps.
Right. But we need to also help it and make it easier. And that's very, very important for our approach. Right? This is why we're saying it's like friendly security or whatever you want to call it. Not friendly user, but friendly security. What does it mean? A lot of the solutions require the application developer to take a library, an SDK, and they need to integrate it to their app. And a lot of companies using also a third party to develop it. That's make it very complicated. Not just from the engineering. Believe it or not, there are other people that can make it difficult, like lawyers and other. Okay, so who do you sign the agreement with? Do you have an NDA? But it's a third party who is reliable. And you start to make it difficult. And company needs to move fast. They need to update their application fast. So even if you protected that with the developers and tomorrow they need to do a patch and you're telling them, okay, you need to wait now 3 days, they will say, you're ruining my business. I prefer the hackers to ruin. So we developed a technology that called zero code technology. And we basically don't use an SDK. We take the application after it's finished. Actually, we can take your application from the App Store, download it, protect it, and you can put it back. So it's automatically protecting. And this thing that sounds like small, it doesn't change the security, but it sounds small. It's actually very important because we want to make it very easy for customers to use security. Because if you hurt their revenue, their business, then you're not doing a good service as a security company.
Right.
And that's what we are trying to always remember when we develop our products.
And the easier we can make security to be adopted, is more likely the security will be present. And that's the future we definitely want to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Asaf, this has been, hopefully we see more of this future, especially from mobile app security, and that we see more from Verimatrix as well.
Yes, I'm sure you will.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And for everyone out there, if you want to learn more about Verimatrix, visit securityweekly.com/VerimatrixRSAC. Stick around. We have a lot more coming up on our live stream. Welcome to RSA Conference 2023. We're recording live from Broadcast Alley here in Moscone West. I'm your host, Mike Shima, and I'm here with Jeff Martin, VP of Product at Men.io. Hello, Jeff. Welcome.
Hey, nice to see you, Mike. I really wish I had your voice. Man, that's a great radio voice there.
Completely faking it. But what we're not faking it is the application security. I host that podcast, and so it's near and dear to my heart. And there's all kinds of packages out there that are, they've got vulns, they've got issues, but they've got more than just vulnerabilities too. Tell us about some of these gnarly packages we should worry about.
So, it's one thing we've been really working on in the past couple of years. We kind of got ahead of it before it really hit, which was really nice to see when it actually really started trending, that we were all set for it. Look, everything in safety revolves around trust. And most people trust their supply chain. But there's huge chunks of the supply chain that's kind of automated behind the scenes when you pull in packages. So you're pulling in these packages and libraries, and you trust them, and that's great. And there's some great known vulnerabilities and all the responsible people are disclosing them, and oh, we got to update and fix this.
Yes.
But I mean, really, what I'm talking about is it's supply chain malware. It's intentionally malicious packages that are being put out to either take the place of, or in some cases, directly leverage the trust you already have in that supply chain.
And the classic example of typo squatting.
Yes.
Because we humans are still typing and maybe making a mistake or so. So
Yeah. Instead of typing log for J or something, you're typing log J4, and suddenly you're bringing in, a Trojan horse into your code. And most like SCA tools don't detect it because it's a new package. It might have been out for 5 minutes. Or, the other big attacks tend to leverage existing communities. So
that's that trust, as you were saying.
Exactly. A new contributor suddenly pops in and throws in some malicious behavior. In one recent case, a developer, well-known package existing for a while, he decided that he was really sick of not getting paid. And so he made the program not work anymore and just showed a message that said, basically, pay me. And there he goes. Now he just broke everybody.
That's surprising. Yeah, that kind of protestware, we've seen examples of that. There was another example I remember, I think it was NPM, developer didn't want to apply MFA.
Yeah.
And then everything started breaking and people are wondering why. What was I hijacked? What happened here?
And it really does leverage that. And look, there's only so many ways you can protect this. You can't watch all of your open source communities. That's not a thing that's actually feasible.
Right.
There's no good way to handle this manually. These attacks tend to be removed actually pretty quickly. I know that because we remove them. We actually
That's good.
We scan NPM, Maven. Within about 5 minutes of any new package being uploaded, we've analyzed it for whether or not it's malicious. And we take in other accounts too, like, is it a brand new package from a contributor nobody's ever seen before, right? Is this somebody we should trust? But we actually run some automated behavior analysis and actually determine, hey, wait a minute, this is behaving in this way. And we report that back to NPM or Maven, and, within a day or so, it gets removed. But meanwhile, everybody who downloaded it, they've already got it in their code.
Yes.
So it's existing for that day. That's a big deal. So, we put a lot of focus on 0-day known vulnerabilities, but not as much focus has been traditionally put on these things, which aren't vulnerabilities. They're attacks. This is actual malware.
They are. And the other side of that spectrum too is these are our assets. There's also, for the longest time, 20 years, if not longer, talking about asset inventory. Everyone should have that, but it's sort of like, how many people have a good one?
Yeah, and I mean, it goes back to things, we're at RSA, right? So tons of people have been talking about S-bombs and this, that, the other thing. If an S-bomb is just your ingredient list, which is really all it is, what a malicious package is just making sure your ingredients aren't actually poisoned. It's very important to know where your pieces are coming from. But just like a recipe, you need to know other things too. Is it fresh? Is it 30 years old?
Right. And you were mentioning too, especially trust. That's touching on the identity. So SLM, Salsa, a lot of these are also talking about provenance. Where did it come from? And, a couple of examples you pointed out were this was the owner that was actually making the change. But in some cases, it can also be, I'll call it sort of laundering trust. Someone might come out and subsume, buy out a package, right?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, look, if I was going to be on the black hat side of things, that's what I would do. You need to leverage trust to be able to attack, basically. And people trust open source. They trust it because it's open. But that same openness really has that same openness, all the benefits of it are great. The downside is anybody can go in. Anybody can contribute. Anybody. Right. You have to be able to sort the good from the bad.
So tell us about that sorting, because from the developer perspective, I hope it's not that I have to do a line-by-line code review of all my dependencies now.
Of course.
And they could have GPG keys, but do I have to go through and check that GPG byte by byte visually and inspect it? That's kind of painful.
It's funny. We have a phrase we use, like, you got to put AppSec on autopilot, right? But it's a good analogy. I'm full of analogies today. It's the end of RSA. Everybody's punching. But
carry on.
Yeah. So look, you can't do this stuff manually. There's too much of it. There's too much going on. So we kind of we advise that people do a twofold approach.
Okay.
Prevent things from being entered that you don't know. Prevent the things, like I said, we detect in about 5 minutes. So great. We can tell you before you put it in.
Clock is ticking. Keep
Yeah,
going.
right? But we can tell you before you put it into your code, this is malicious. Don't do that.
Yes.
Great. That's the easy stuff. The problem is, and we see this in our customer base as an SCA vendor, large chunks of people have old code. Amazing, right? Most code already exists. Well, that pre-existing code has malicious packages in it. Tons of them. When we first started getting into this, we were a little shocked how many malicious packages were introduced, 6 months ago into a code base that nobody's messed with for a year. And
nobody wants to touch either, right?
Nobody wants to touch it.
Yeah.
Nobody's looking at it. But it's out there in the real world with malware effectively in it. It's absolutely astounding.
Yeah, and I think some of it is too, you're talking about preventive, but there's also detective, right?
Right.
And I think that's where we talk about, not that you have to fix every single vuln right now within a 7-day period. I look at that and hear, how mature is the team that they can just respond to it, and they know that they could eventually find an owner or something like that.
It's funny because we recently rolled out this detection value to our customers. So we now, as part of our SCA tool, detect malicious packages and tell you, hey, in your inventory, this thing right there, that's malicious. And my favorite question from the, let's say, less mature organizations is, what do I do about that? I'm like, well, what would you do if you had a virus on your computer? You remove it. Like, get rid of that. Oh, really? Yes, really. You should take out the malware. Is it more important than a known vulnerability? Yes, it's an attack. Remove the attack first. This is much more important than any 0-day. You're actually under attack.
Yeah, and I think that having that context is really helpful for developers and for AppSec teams, because a lot of the decision isn't so much, I hope we've gotten away from every vulnerability exists that needs to be fixed now. Like, well, what about the ones that we worry about? What are the ones that impact us? Let us prioritize to a few dozen rather than a few hundred.
I mean, I get asked 50 times a week, how do we set up our AppSec program to make sure that our SCA and our our dependencies are, well handled, and we don't have attacks going on or big vulnerabilities we got to worry about later. And the answer is so, I don't know, trite, but one, keep up to date on things. If you just keep your dependencies up to date, you've solved 80, 90%.
It's a good discipline, yeah.
Right? And it's better functionally too. You have all sorts of good benefits for that. Do that. Automate it. You can't do that manually. Just automate it. And then the second part is, you have to prioritize the risks you got left. So malicious package should be at the top of your list. Get that out of there. That's an attack. But below that, not all vulnerabilities are made equal. Some of them, you can't even reach the vulnerable method. Great. We tell you, deprioritize that one. Other ones, sure, there's CVSS, but CVSS is kind of just the starting point. There's so much more to prioritization. And you can't do it manually. If you're doing it manually, you're too slow.
Yes, and I think, and there's been a theme, honestly, throughout the day, throughout this week that we've heard, just automation as a way to help developers, help teams, because honestly, there's a lot of drudgery, there's a lot of boring things to do, and if you can just automate keeping things up to date. Now, I will say, talking about SEMVer versions, the minor point release is pretty easy. It's those major updates that some of those upgrades staying up to date can be hard. But that's honestly probably where you should be focusing engineering effort anyway.
We actually put a lot of effort into that in the last year.
Yeah.
Because we have a thing called Merge Confidence.
Okay.
So we own Renovate, the big open source dependency health. So we can see when people update whether or not it breaks their build. And so we just surface that data and we say, hey, everybody who went from this version to this version, nobody broke their build. Don't worry about it. So even a major can oftentimes really not introduce any functional risk.
That's wonderful. Yeah, just having confidence that this will, like you said, just stay updated. Yeah. We haven't even talked about the security part of that. We're just saying,
so if you stay updated and you're screening for the malicious packages and removing them when you find them immediately, you're pretty well set. That's kind of that's why we were calling about autopilot, right? All the drudgery work, it's like cruise control on the highway. Can't take your eyes off the road. I mean, you can't start reading a book while you're on cruise control yet. But you also don't have to pay as much attention. It can automatically follow the car in front of you and things.
Yes, or do something more interesting with your development time. I think.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Don't develop while you're driving, though. That's bad.
That's probably very bad. You gave us a little bit of a sense of some of the problem space. The idea that there's a lot of legacy software out there, orphaned systems. Who owns them? Give us a sense of kind of the volume you've seen of just the number of packages that orgs are trying to take care of, which points to why there needs to be automation.
I mean, the problem is it keeps growing. Every time I have a stat, it's like it just doubles again every 6 months.
Oh, dear.
But I mean, think about the size of the average application as we've moved to cloud native. It's stopped being just, we don't even measure it in lines of code anymore. You can't count them. But you're bringing in all these dependencies, thousands, tens of thousands of dependencies in an average application. And then each of those have transitive dependencies. And I mean, this is why we all spend so much time at RSA here talking about S-bombs and everything else. Just knowing what you have is a huge challenge.
Just knowing what you have. And it's so funny that that's so simple. Knowing what you have, stay up to date. Half of the RSA exhibitor floor could possibly go away if we could do that.
I mean, honestly, it's like, can you imagine a world where the FDA would have to regulate food and nobody knew what was any of the food, in any of it, right? Mm-hmm. So it has to be automated. It's just the speed of things nowadays.
It's just the speed of things. Well, we sped through this conversation quite well, and I think we need to let you go back onto plane, train, or automobile, whichever is your choice to get home.
I got to put it on autopilot, apparently. Sticks my theme.
That sounds good. If you'd like to learn more about Mend.io, visit securityweekly.com/MendRSAC. And this wraps up our RSA Conference 2023. Thank you to Sam, to Renee, and to Blake for keeping things organized behind the scenes. Thank you, listeners, for joining us. If you'd like to see any and all of our interviews from this week, visit securityweekly.com/RSAC. And please stay secure, stay subscribed, check out our family of podcasts at securityweekly.com. Be seeing you.